Choosing the best topics for your English conversation class is really easy once you know this super simple strategy. You'll never run out of things to talk about. I'm Will from Enchanted ESL, and this is the second video in a series about making your English conversation classes amazing. We're talking about finding the best conversation topics. And no, I'm not going to give you a long list of topics and themes because that won't help. You have to find it out yourself. Huh? But what's the point in this video then? Well, I'm going to show you how you can find the best topics for your specific students and how to organise them in such a way that you'll always have something interesting to talk about. Because everyone is different. All your students will have some things that they love talking about and quite a lot of things they're just not interested in. One may love football and classical music, while another might want to talk about politics and reality TV. It's your job to find those interests and build your classes around them. Ideally, you do this right from when you begin with a new student. But if you've already started, you can do it later, it doesn't really matter. You're essentially doing a kind of needs analysis. If you don't know what that is, I have a full video explaining needs analysis and it's up there and down in the description. But in brief, it's a way of finding out the interests and the level of your student. The first thing you can do with your student seems really obvious, and it's just ask them what they want to talk about. This will get you a good general idea. You can get them to tell you lots of different topics that they have interests in, but it might not find out the most specific details. They might say they want to talk about sports. Okay, but do they define exactly which sports and which aspects of all of those sports? You can ask them directly for those details, but if they're not sure, then you will find this out later. In your following session together, prepare a bunch of questions and prompts around one of those topics, let's say sports, and make them relevant to the age and the level of your student. Have a conversation using those questions and prompts and see what sticks. Some things will provoke a lot of interest and you can dig quite deep. Other things, well, your student won't care so much. Specifically, look out for things that your students have experience or knowledge in. If they know a lot about something, you can get them to elaborate in a lot more detail in a later session. I recommend you write down these things. As you go through the general topics, you'll find lots of specific things that you can use in the future. And if you don't write them down, then you'll forget. You're creating a big bank of ideas for the future. They're mostly going to be around your students' job or studies, their family and their hobbies. And hopefully you'll find some common ground too, both between you and your student, and if you're teaching a group, between the students themselves. Do you all like rock music? Do you all have a passion for travel? So all of these points of interest will form the basis for the next dozen or so sessions, and you can go real deep in them. This is why I always say the lists of questions you can download from the internet are not that useful. They're too generic. Only you know what your student is really interested. Only you can create the questions that are perfectly designed for them. But that doesn't mean coming up with everything from scratch. Later in the series, I'll be showing you some of my favorite prompts and question templates. These are structures into which you can insert the topics and ideas that are relevant to your students. And each structure or template challenges a different part of language or gives a different perspective on an idea. When that's ready, you'll be able to find it up there and down in the description. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell notification icon so you're notified of when those videos come out, and all of the videos that I make in the future. Oh, and while you're at it, hit the like button if you're finding this video useful. It really helps the channel grow. Thanks. Alright, so now we've got a bunch of interesting points to cover that will last us a good 10-15 weeks. We need to think a bit more long term. Eventually those ideas will run out. But the good thing is we're on easy street now. We've done all the hard work. During all your conversation sessions, do like a mini version of what we've just done. Some low-level inquiring into new adjacent topics that could be fun to explore. Maybe during one session you get talking about something really interesting but time runs out. Store it in the bank for the next session or a later session. Sometimes a news story or an event might come up which can provoke another whole class or two of conversation. Plus you can mix things up every now and then. Throw in the occasional question that's a bit different to the rest of the topics and see if your students interact with them. If they don't, just drop them. But if they show interest, then you've got another whole channel to go down. All the while you're constantly maintaining a big bank of ideas for the future. And don't be afraid to go back to things you've spoken about before if your students are really passionate about them. They don't mind talking about it over and over again and going into more and more detail. I have some students that are happy to talk about the same thing week after week. Of course you want a bit of variety, but if something's working, stick with it. One final trick if after all this you're still stuck for ideas. Get your students to prepare the topic. Tell them to bring something about a topic they care about. Some information, some pictures, even an item that they own. This gives your students some agency, they get to choose what to talk about, and it can open up a whole new field of ideas. Don't use this trick too often though, otherwise students will get sick of it and think you're not doing any work. So now you're full of different ideas to talk about, it's time to focus on improving their English. Lots of correcting mistakes, right? Well, sort of. It's not quite as simple as that. Correction technique in conversation classes is a tricky balance. You can find out how I do it in the next video in this series, which will be right here. But for now, I've been Will from Enchanted ESL, wishing you all the joy and success in your teaching. See ya!